Used to spend my nights out in ballroom. Liquor was the only love I'd known. But you rescued me from reaching for the bottom and brought me back, being too far gone. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy.
Man, I'll tell you, that Benny, what a song. Doug, it reminds me a lot of you since
I love
you
that
live
song.
in Tennessee, you know?
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, guys, before we get started, let me give a warm welcome, man. We got Big B Juarez. He's always watching us from Long Beach. He's actually trucking, working right now. We got the San Diego PD legend, Christopher Kilby, and we got the man of honor, man, former chief of police, Gerardo Chalo Gerardo, and we have Felipe Navarro, all the way from El Paso, Texas. Bienvenido,
Right.
Felipe. We got Big Jose, Big Joe, 67 from Salinas. Hey,
Oh.
Warden, it's up there in your part of town, huh? Not in Salinas, but I mean in up North California.
Yes, it is. Near Soledad.
Yes, yeah, they're Soledad. And we also have our man of the hour, man, Big Jim DeGenis, Batman. Warden, this man was a former correctional officer, retired correctional officer, did, I believe, 24 years, Pelican Bay, and now he's living in Thailand. It's 5 o'clock in the morning over there, and he's up watching you today, Warden,
What's he doing up so early?
because he's excited to see you. He's excited. And we also got Jay Cerda. It says, CTF, I see you.
Okay.
That's a prison, right? CTF?
Yeah. ETF, Correctional Training Facility. Soledad.
Oh, Soledad. Hey, Warden, you probably know this guy then.
What's his name?
Jay Cerda.
Serna. No, it might have been before or after my time.
But he's watching us all the way from Soledad. We got Beat Juarez once again, brother. And we have Christopher Kilby once again. And we have our famous sister, Ceci Escano, all the way, I believe, from San Bernardino. Pero bienvenida,
right.
Ceci.
Oh, my stomping grounds.
Your old stomping ground. That's right, Warden. Hey, Warden, listen, right now, Bobby's going to introduce you, but thank you for logging on. I know we had some technical difficulties, but we're set. But before we do, we want to welcome somebody, and I'm going to let Bobby start off with the welcome to our new co-host who's going to be on with us every Wednesday. Bobby, it's all yours, brother.
Well, first of all, I wanted to start out. I'm having not drinking today, suffering from some allergies.
Oh,
Yeah,
my-
so it's allergy season. It's already 100 degrees here in Phoenix. We've had a couple of 100-degree temperatures. So I'm having some coffee, and I'm drinking from my Iraqi Freedom Cup from my time in Iraq, and I'm smoking a Espinosa Habano, one of my favorite cigars from Espinosa Cigars. Look, wait, right there.
All right.
It's a great cigar. Love smoking this one.
I get kicked out of the house.
Yes, yes, yes.
You
And
get to speak in the house, Warden, not me.
as they say, yo pongo la ley aquí, brother. So, also, we want to welcome Doug Collier. Is going to be our co-hosting with us, and we had him on last week. Last week, yes, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Yeah, last week. We had you on last week, and we just want to give you a warm welcome.
Thank you.
And looking forward to having you here with us. Bring a wealth of knowledge, experience from your time in San Diego. You primarily did gangs. You did some major cases, but also did most of your time in gangs. I'm an old gang cop, so I always love having old gang cops around. So, welcome.
Thank you very much, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Doug. Hey, Doug. So, what are you smoking today? I mean, not smoking. What are you drinking today? Tell us.
I'm drinking a little of the basil today.
That's good stuff.
little Kentucky bourbon, and I've got one of my favorite. I think last week I shared one of my glasses from PD in Iowa, but this is one of my favorites. I collect old books. You can kind of see some of them behind me. And this is James Fenimore's The Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, wow. I seen that movie.
So there's a quote. Pardon me, Warden?
I said I've seen that movie a dozen times.
Yeah, well, the book's even better.
Oh, I bet.
But this is a series they do on classic literature, and it's got the quotes on the back from the first chapter. But thought I'd share that a little bit with you.
Thank you.
Wow, that's wonderful. Warden, what are you drinking today? Which cerveza are you drinking?
Having a little beer.
Which kind? Which kind do you drink today, Warden?
Having a superior.
Oh, superior. Oh, dark or light?
Light one. Lager.
Light one? Lager. Oh, great, man. That's awesome. Well, today I took out my old bottle of tequila. It's called Padre Azul. And I'm telling you, if you like tequila, this is a great tequila, Padre Azul. It's they sell it over here at a place in St. Petersburg. I couldn't find it nowhere else, but great tequila. And I'm drinking it on a cup. Believe it or not, my dad was a pastor of a Pentecostal church and a bishop in the Apostolic Church, and he never drank in his life. One day he goes to Guadalajara, and some of the parachute or some of the members of the church had just got converted, and they saw him there, and they made him actually a tequila glass to drink, and it's made out of pure leather, and it says David Contreras on it. Since he never drank, when he came back, he goes, "Aquí te va, borracho," and he gave it to me. And so now I this is my favorite cup. Whenever I'm drinking tequila, this is my cup in honor of my father, even though he never drank.
I love tequila, pero me saca el indio.
Oh, I think it takes a indio out of all of us. Exactly.
But I love it.
Well, once again, you know what, Doug? We're very excited, man, that you're part of our team, and I know that you're going to be bringing so many more people to come and join us and be guests, and we're excited. Ceci, I'm sorry, I know you're not from San Bernardino, from Riverside. Viva Riverside, Ceci. Dispensa. With that said, Bobby, it's all yours. Introduce our guest, even though he's not a guest, he's one of us. He's been here before, and he's coming back after this. He doesn't know yet, but he's coming back after this. But go ahead, Bobby, it's all yours.
Well, we want to welcome our guest making a second appearance here with us. And this is going to be part 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to be going through a lot of the Wardens, Warden Daniel Vasquez, tons of experience. I mean, I think last time you were here, you were talking about when you started in corrections. I think I was still a little kid, but wealth of knowledge. And today we're going to hit on the warden's going to describe the Robert Alton Harris execution, which I don't know much about. I just heard about it. I wrote about it a little bit, what you guys were talking about. And we're going to also talk a little bit about the promotional process and just follow up on his experience working as a warden. Was, I believe it was 10 years in San Quentin. That there alone, I could probably be several episodes, appearances on our show. But just want to welcome the warden. Want to welcome you here for your second appearance. We're looking forward to hear your experiences, wealth of knowledge, and the floor is yours. Bienvenidos.
Hey, Warden, before you continue, Warden, let me just give a quick briefing on everybody. Not everybody, like Adam Salcido, I don't think he was watching it. Last time he was watching us all the way from Tepatitlan, Jalisco, Viva Jalisco. He's watching us all the way from over there. But you started at a very young age. You were enrolled in the military, forced to go in the military. While in the military, you were in the Army, and you went to the Bay of Pigs. You were there during the war, but you were there after the fact. And then in 1965, you got hired with the California Department of Corrections. And working for the Department of Corrections, you worked at different prisons. But in 1970, you became a parole agent. And being a parole agent, I'm just giving a quick briefing so people haven't listened. Being a parole agent, you were able to transfer over to SSU, which is one of the most prestige units in the California Department of Corrections at that time. And today, you were, I think, one of the original members of SSU. And during that time, then you went back into prisons, and you eventually became a captain at Susanville. There was a big riot, and you displayed your leadership skills in that riot. And the director of corrections heard your name and said, "This man has leadership qualities." And from right there, you went to Soledad as a associate warden. You were there, and then they offered you the wardenship for the first time. And most new wardens, they send them to Avenal, they send them to, smaller prisons, but not you. They sent you to San Quentin State Prison. So that's where we're going to start off. But before we talk about San Quentin, Warden, do you mind just sharing for our viewers what the process is to become a warden? I understand you have to go in front of the governor, or the governor appoints you. Can you describe the process, please?
Well, the director of corrections, that his name was Daniel McCarthy. He nominated me when I was on my 40th birthday, wardenship at San Quentin. And what I had to do is I had to appear before the Senate Rules Committee. First of all, you do a background, and then you sit in front of the Rules Committee, Senate Rules Committee. They ask you a bunch of questions, and then they either approve you or disapprove you to be the warden. So I was approved, and I went to San Quentin and spent 10 years there, as you know. And I was the last maximum custody warden at San Quentin State Prison.
Wow. Now, Warden, I believe that now you become a warden, and were you the first Hispanic warden at that prison?
I was the second one. The first one was Martin Vallejo.
Okay, and he was like in the 1800s, correct?
In 1853.
Wow.
It was a bit of a hiatus in him.
It's a big gap.
That is so interesting. Bobby, go ahead with your next question, Bobby.
No, I'm just hearing that. I was able to trace some of my family on my mom's side. They were in California about that time, riding horses and part of the gold rush, I guess.
Is that right?
I don't know. Pretty incredible. Yeah, I was able to trace. I have a prima that lives out in Riverside, and she was able to trace birth certificates, all this stuff. And on my mom's side, we have family there in California, way back there.
Born and raised in Redlands, California.
Yes.
Not far from Riverside.
Yes. Well, what we wanted to ask you, Warden, is if you could explain some of the challenges that you encountered as a warden. Some of the difficult, some of the roadblocks that you encountered. Just like to hear your side of that.
Well, you know what? When I first reported to San Quentin, it was under federal receivership, and the court master was Alan Breed, who had been the former director of the California Youth Authority. So the first thing I did is I read his I guess it was a journal, sort of how to get along with the federal court monitor. So I read his report, and I made it mandatory reading for all my supervisors and administrative staff at San Quentin when I got there. So we had to follow the court master. I didn't want to fight with him. I just wanted to see if I could get the institution back to constitutional, back to constitutional operation, which I did. It was a very, very great experience. I'd spent 10 years there. I really enjoyed my assignment. I had good relationships with the staff, and when you're in a maximum security institution, it's you're fighting for your life. It's like a war zone. So it was the staff were looking for leadership, and I was fortunate enough to be able to provide some of that.
Hey, Warden, while you were there, that's when they had death row. I mean, you had the worst of the worst. You had Topo Peters, you had Pablo Sosa, you had all the Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia, Black Guerrilla Family, Aryan Brotherhood leadership there in '84 when you were there. Can you talk a little bit about the high power inmates that you had and the challenges you had with them?
when I first got there, there was 1,460 inmates in the security housing unit. They were all gang members, Mafia, Nuestra Familia, Aryan Brotherhood, Black Guerrilla Family. They were all there, and all the leaders and associates. So when I first got there, they were integrated. There'd be a member of the Mexican Mafia in one cell, the BGF in the other cell, the Nuestra Familia in the other cell. So what they were doing is they were gassing. They would, if an officer got anybody angry on that tier, they'd gas them with urine and feces. So when I first got there, I integrated them. I put one Mexican Mafia in one cell, BGF in the next cell, and Nuestra Familia in the next cell, Aryan Brother in the next cell. So one of the associates told me, "Oh, they're gonna start fighting and gassing themselves." I said, "Well, better they gas themselves than our staff." So it worked. I integrated them, and they gassed themselves for a little bit. Then they got tired of it and they quit. But that's what the first thing I did was I integrated them instead of.
Go ahead, Warden.
Instead of having them, well, they were segregated, so I integrated them. Put one next to the other and let them gas themselves instead of us.
Warden, to make a decision like that, does the warden have the authority to do it, or did you have to call Sacramento and get the director's permission? Because that's a big move. I mean, even back then, that was a ballsy move. How was that, and was there challenges behind it?
That was my decision. I didn't have to call central office or headquarters. I made that decision myself.
Warden, since we're talking about when you first got there, I worked for the Department of Corrections. I opened up Donovan State Prison in '87. When I got there, everybody brought cards. And I think those that are watching the show that work for the CDC, they know what I'm talking about when it becomes cars.
Yes.
PD have no clue what a car is. But in corrections, we know what a car is.
What's
now,
a car?
you get a car, that's when you get there. And let's say, for example, Soledad has correctional officers that work at Folsom or work at San Quentin. They all hang out together. They got guys from Chino. They all hang out together. Guys from San Quentin. They all literally, they cluster up together. And there's different little groups, but they're called cards in the Department of Corrections.
Right.
Okay.
Now, Warden, you get to San Quentin. You had never worked San Quentin.
Never.
And there was a huge car, because when I was at Donovan, they brought a huge car to San Diego. And these guys, I mean, they were hardcore dudes. How was that a challenge to you, coming from Soledad, coming from SSU, coming from from Susanville, going into a brand new car? What were the challenges behind that? Were you accepted?
There was not too many challenges of that nature because we were in a war zone. San Quentin was in a war zone. They were gassing all the officers. They were doing all sorts of things against the officers. So the first thing I did was I wanted to lock up the institution. But I had never served at San Quentin, and I've conducted many riots, but never at San Quentin. So what I did is I called all my lieutenants in for a meeting. And I said to them, I said, "This is my first time at San Quentin. I'm going to lock it down. What are going to be my challenges?" So they began to give me school. They schooled me. One lieutenant said, "Well, Warden, turn the water off." He says, "And give them 2 5-gallon buckets, one filled with water so they can drink water from it, and one empty one so they can take a piss and a crap, and just hope that they don't get it mixed up." And then he said, put some officers up on the tiers with cameras, even though they don't have no film in them, just make them look like they're filming, So that's what I did. Turned the water off. They started breaking up the toilets and throwing them out of the cells, and but we managed to control it. And so I locked the institution down, took control of it my first week there.
Wow.
And Warden, another big challenge that you had. I'm sorry, Bobby, I'm jumping in with this, but I have a lot of experience working the prison system. Dude, if we had a cartel expert, you would take it over, brother. But I think this is very interesting. Well, I believe it was your first year that you were there, that you had a correctional sergeant by the name of Birchfield that was murdered. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, he was murdered in June of 1984.
Yes.
He was murdered by members of the Black Guerrilla family, the BGF. And unfortunately, what he did is that an inmate asked him to light his cigarette for him. They could smoke then in the cells. And unfortunately, Birchfield broke a security rule and got close to the bars to light this inmate cigarette. And that's when they stabbed him with a homemade San Quentin spear. They hit him in the heart, and he died before he could get him to the infirmary.
Warden, how did you respond to that? Prior to that, had you had any correctional officer under your watch murdered?
No, that was my first experience.
Tell us how you responded, and how did your leadership? What did you do to control the situation, to investigate it, and to prosecute these guys?
You know what? I immediately locked down the institution, and I had these two inmates taken into custody, and they were placed in the administrative it was called the ADSEG, Administrative Segregation Unit, the maximum within a maximum. Wow. And referred them to the district attorney's office, and they were convicted. But later, their convictions were overturned. But anyway, that's I locked the prison down. It was locked down for about 90 days before we went back to normal.
And Warden, did you know Sergeant Birchfield?
Yes, I did.
I was talking to Andy, what's his name? Andy Kota, and he was telling me that he was roommates with Sergeant Birchfield at the time.
That's right. I had forgotten that they were roommates. That's right.
Yeah.
Andy.
Hey, Warden, do you know the circumstances as to why the convictions were overturned?
No, you know what? I don't. I'm not sure. I don't know what the Marin County DA's office did or did wrong. Yeah. But anyway, they were overturned, and they were on death row, but they were overturned, and they received life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Okay.
Warden, in a situation like that, it's your security squad, and I believe Warden Bobby Ayers was the lieutenant in charge of the security squad. They're the first to respond. They lock it down, and then does Marin County investigators, sheriffs come in? Do they conduct the investigation, or does your staff conduct the investigations back then? Do you remember?
It was a joint investigation. It was with outside Marin County District Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Office, Marin County Sheriff's Office, and my staff. So it was a joint adventure in the investigation. You know, they didn't know their way around San Quentin, and obviously my officers did.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doug.
No, I was going to say that'd be interesting to have to work a case like that because, I mean, all your witnesses, you're going to be spending all your time in the institution. So you got to, as an outside investigator, you would have to enlist the assistance of the staff of the prison. I mean, how else are you going to do your job?
You know, because they didn't know their way around the prison.
Yeah. And even the crime scene people that have got to come in and process the scene, I guess.
Exactly. We sealed the cell as a crime scene, and then they the investigators took over after that and did all the work that they had to do in the crime scene.
Wow.
Warden,
go ahead, Doug.
I have a question. How far back? Like I said, like David said, I never worked in a correction facility, but I was a street cop working prison gangs. And I mentioned on the last show how impressed I was, the intel that is generated from the intelligence personnel that worked there. Whenever we needed anything, when I was working the Arizona Mexican Mafia case with my squad, we would go to Florence, we'd go to the SMU2. We were there once a week during our RICO case that we did. And how far back did you guys start developing the intelligence units within the prison?
Well, there was one individual that was the primary gang investigator. His name was Bill Hankins.
Yes.
William Hankins. And you know what? He was doing investigations. He had a bunch of intelligence, but the warden, the warden before me didn't pay any attention to it. Nobody paid attention to it. All the wardens were kind of like asleep at the wheel, you know. They didn't realize that these prison gangs had such a hold on the safety and security of the institutions and staff. So it took me to get Hankins recognized for the knowledge of all the gang intelligence that he possessed. In fact, you wrote a book. You sent me a book.
Yes, I did. Did you get it, Warden? Did you receive it?
Really a fantastic book.
Fantastic book, yes.
Anyway,
Alpha
Bill Hankins was the very first gang investigator in the entire state of California.
Wow.
You know, Warden, Bobby met Bobby Hernandez. When Bobby worked for you, he was the CAC, Criminal Activities Coordinator. And
Yes,
Bobby here, Arce, used to attend the meetings. I was part of the prison gang task force back in the 80s, 88 through 93. And your Bobby Hernandez, he would come to our meetings and we would raise our hands. Hey, tell us about Mike Eisen. Tell us about Acha. Well, who's he hanging around with? And Bobby used to right there and then give everybody a briefing through the prison task force. He was working for you at the time. You remember that?
He was an outstanding criminal investigator and leader of the squad that did intelligence within the institution.
Warden, we got a question from Big Joe all the way from San Jose. It says, Warden, thank you for your years of service. You're a true legend of legends. And I agree with you, Big Joe, on that. Did you know the late Mr. Aspudo? His son is my co-worker at CTF. Big Joe works at Soledad.
Yeah, Bernie Espedo?
Yes,
Bernie?
I believe so.
Yeah,
Aspudo, yes.
Bernie was my warden at the correctional center at Susanville.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Bernie Espedo.
Any other questions for the warden?
No, I think this being just that I was always really impressed by the professionalism of the gang investigators within the facilities, within the correctional facilities. We leaned on them not only at the state prison, but at the county jails. The county jail here at Maricopa County had a really good intel group, and we uncovered tons of information, tons of intel that we're able to act on. And there's a guy that I worked with, and I know you know him, David, Armando Saldate. Armando Saldate was the superstar in our group. I think he is now working in Colorado. He's still active, so he probably would not be able to come on, but he used to be, he took the lead on the RICO case that we did out of Phoenix on the MA.
Okay. Let me give you a little story about the security squad, or the goon squad, as they were called. During the second maximum era, they would do all the, they would interface inside the institution. When the institution was the maximum custody operation was transferred to the new prison in Pelican Bay, you know what? I had the goon squad then interface with the county jails. You know, we started with the largest county jail, which was San Bernardino County Jail, then Los Angeles. And I assigned the officers, instead of doing investigation inside the prison, I had them interface with those county jails. And that's where you guys picked up a lot of our intelligence, and we picked up information about gang members that were on the way to the reception center at San Quentin. And so we were able to get 1 foot ahead of them.
Hey, Warden, one of the things that you're also very popular for, and I got this from Bobby Hernandez, he was telling me that you reached out as a warden to the community. And you formed literally a liaison, a bridge between the community and San Quentin. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, you know what I think? I thought it was essential, you know, to let the community know what San Quentin was about, because we had a lot of shootings. And like, for example, my staff shot and killed 5 inmates in the line of duty. They were good shootings. So, you know, the neighbors used to hear all these gunshots, you know, going off. So I thought it was important to interface with them and let them know that San Quentin was a violent place, but it was a better place to have violence in San Quentin than to have the violence in their living rooms.
No.
So that was the basis of my communication and essential contact with the community. Of course, I was invited to join the Marin County Sheriff and Police Officers Association, and that also helped solidify communication with the local law enforcement.
Warden, we have a question from Mario Martinez. Warden, what's your opinion of the way the prison system is being run now? I started in 1993. I retired in 2015. Thank you, Mario, for your service.
Well, I understand that nowadays the wardens have very little autonomy. They got to go through the director of corrections or the agency secretary. When I was the warden, I made my own decisions. I didn't have to go through all the bureaucracy. I was running a maximum security prison, and I assumed the responsibility for its operation. I didn't ask for any advice. I didn't ask for permission. I did what I knew was the right thing to do.
Interesting.
Doug, let's go ahead and let's get started with one of the famous questions.
Yeah. Hey, Warden, I was doing a little research on your background, and I understand that you were nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in Blood In and Blood Out. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, you know what, I was approached by the what do you call him, the director of the film that they were going to do, Blood In and Blood Out, and they approached me at San Quentin if I would sponsor them to come into the prison to do the filming. So the first thing I did was tell them that the only thing that my requirement was that they don't kill any officers, because we had Birchfield killed, and they assured me they wouldn't. And so I read the script to make sure that I understood what it was about, and I approved it and got permission from Central Office to go ahead and let them in. They didn't argue with me. They figured if it turned sour, it was going to be my responsibility anyway. But you know what? I introduced them to the staff, that gave pictures to the gun rail officers, and they got to know each other. And I had officers that would escort them in with all their equipment and show them around, let them do their filming. So they did the film without a hitch, and it became Blood In and Blood Out. Did
having that kind of crew there, what kind of impact did that have on your security operations?
Well, you know what, it was quite a challenge, to keep them safe.
Yeah.
But they had tons of equipment. They had to come in and every day and take out every evening, and so it was a challenge. But I had some good officers. San Quentin has always had good officers, and so they rose to the occasion, and they kept them safe.
Awesome.
Hey, Warden, what movie star do you remember? Did you talk to any of those guys? I believe there's one. What's his name? A real famous one. Danny Trejo. He was in the movie. Benjamin Brandt. Did you meet any of those guys?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I did. Danny Trejo's a great guy. So is they're all good people. Benjamin Pratt. He started. They were all unknown stars at that time. You didn't have no. They were all brand new actors.
Yeah. Hey, Joey Smith, thank you very much. I think it's age on my end. I'm 64 years old. I think dementia's kicking in. Warden, I apologize if I said Dan Hernandez. It's Danny Vasquez, dispensa warden. It's dementia kicking in. But with that, Warden, let me just quick pause. We're gonna hear a quick word from our sponsor. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Matthew 5:9. With that said, Doug, it's all yours for your next question.
Warden, now I understand that while you were warden at San Quentin, that you were involved with a couple of executions, I believe 4 or 5, and that one of them was the first one that occurred within 25 years, and it involved Robert Alton Harris.
That's right.
What can you tell me about the experience on that? And what I'm looking for maybe is how was the tension in the room when it kept getting put off, by the courts until it actually occurred?
If I remember correctly, I think there was 7 stays of execution that day. And finally, it took the United States Supreme Court to forbid any other lower court of filing an injunction on the execution. And the very first one, obviously, was the very first one in 25 years, and there was a tremendous amount of politics. Now, in an execution, the warden is required to have 12 reputable witnesses that are mandated by law to be present at the execution. So what I did is I hand selected every witness and interviewed them and approved them. So I had my hands in approval of every one of the 12 official witnesses. One of them was the father of the murdered. He was a deputy sheriff in San Diego County, and he participated in the arrest of Robert Alton Harris and his brother, and Harris had killed his son. He had killed.
What?
And Warden, that's him right there. Doug, do you mind just sharing a little bit about the story with the warden? I know he knows it, but just with the viewers, once again, who he is.
Real quick, this is a Detective Steve Baker. He was with the San Diego Police Department, and Harris and his brother had done a bank robbery. Before the bank robbery, they wanted to use a stolen car as their getaway, and they found the detective's son. He was 16 at the time, and his companion, another 15-year-old boy, were sitting in a car eating hamburgers, and they kidnapped him, and they took him off into a rural area just outside of the Mira Mesa community of San Diego, and they ended up murdering both the boys. Yeah. And they never used the car in the bank robbery. But what had happened was, the bank, right after the murders, they went and did the bank robbery, and there was a witness who actually followed the suspects around, found a phone somewhere, because back then there wasn't cell phones. This was in, I believe, 78, and called it into the dispatch. Officers were able to respond, and Steve Baker was one of the officers, and he actually took Harris into custody. At that time, no one knew. Yeah, no one knew of the 2 victims. Yeah. So it was after questioning by the detectives
that Harris had murdered his son quite yet.
Yeah.
Or I think he might have. If it would have been me, I'd have had some street justice, I'm sure. You know,
I think all of us, Warden. But another thing that we've heard, Doug and I have not been able to confirm, but we know that Baker's wife was a dispatcher at the time. I don't know if you know this, Warden, but we believe that we've heard it from different sources. We haven't been able to contact her, but she was the dispatcher that took the call.
Is that I did not.
She directed the officers to the house, her husband to the house. They placed him under arrest. But look at the family tie here. The mom is the dispatcher, not knowing that it's her son, and the detective that handcuffs him, not knowing that they had just murdered his son. Wow. Unbelievable.
Incredible.
Yeah. Small world. So Warden, go ahead, Doug.
What was his how was he when he was going through this process, Harris? Was he cavalier about it? Was he nonchalant? And I understand there was actually a video recording of the execution.
You know what? There was. It was imposed on us by the courts. When he first went to, we would take him from death row and put him in what's called a death watch cell. Mm-hmm. I handpicked all my execution staff. The 2 officers in the death watch cell, they were matched in this way. One of them was a very talkative individual officer. He was very, very talkative. The other one was a very stoic individual. So the inmates in the death watch cell, they go through different mood swings. When they were very talkative, the one officer, his name was Marvin Wilson, he would take over. And then when the guy would get quiet and very, very quiet, then Officer Zimmerman would take over. So they were kind of mixed match, but they matched the mood of Harris while he was in the death watch cell awaiting his execution. And you know what? I don't think that Harris really believed that he was going to be executed. He was, kind of nonchalant about it, and in fact, he was put into the gas chamber, strapped in, and we got a phone call. Actually, it wasn't a phone call because I took the ring off. I had a red light that would flash. I figured if the phone rang when I was putting a guy into the gas chamber, it would have probably scared me half to death. So I red light that would flash when there was a phone call come in, and so that light flashed 6 times. Wow. And we had one time we had to take him out of the gas chamber, return him back to the death watch cell. Then on the last time, he was just a shell of himself. We had to carry him in to the gas chamber to strap him in. The placement in the gas chamber and removal just took its toll on him mentally. We had to actually literally carry him in the last time to get him executed.
And Warden, he was executed at 6:01 a.m. So it started at 12 midnight. The phone rings or doesn't ring, the lights flash. You send him back several times during the night. Meanwhile, you got all the witnesses there. You got the family members there. And they're still sitting there from 12 o'clock, probably from 8 o'clock at night, all the way to 6 in the morning. No breaks. And they're just standing by waiting for the execution, correct?
Yes. You know what? The official witnesses, I had them in my residence. I had a residence on the grounds of San Quentin, and they spent their hours at my residence. I had my supervising food manager, Lou Umbe. He brought them food and refreshments, no alcoholic beverages, just food and refreshments, and we kept them there so that they wouldn't be wandering around. The family of Robert Alton Harris, I had them in a separate part of the facility, keeping them there. Obviously you couldn't mix them both, so I had them in a different spot, and they were also taken care of. We didn't abuse them or nothing. We took care of them until the actual execution took place.
Wow.
Go ahead, Doug.
What was his? What did he request for a last meal? Do you recall?
I think it was chicken. It was fried chicken. What do you call it? The Colonel's fried chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he requested, and we brought it to him.
Warden, because it had been 25 years, you had protesters coming from Norway, from Africa, from all over the world. How did you control that? Did you have a lieutenant, a captain in charge of that? Tell us a little bit about the environment outside of the prison walls.
There
was just literally hundreds of protesters at the east gate, the main gate to the entrance of Central City Prison. There was also protesters on boats in the bay with loudspeakers and firecrackers and all sorts of stuff. There was a liaison that was started between the local law enforcement and the California Highway Patrol to help us with maintaining security of the institution from anybody breaking in through the gates. So it was a great liaison between law enforcement to maintain security of those hundreds and hundreds of demonstrators.
Warden, before we talk about his last breath, and I know Doug's going to get into that, tell us about it. It had been 25 years since they had, I know Doug mentioned it, they had an execution. Did you even know if the gas chamber worked? I mean, you had to start literally from ground zero, man. Yeah. I talked to Bobby about it, and he told me you had him going all over the nation, bringing these experts to practice, and tweak the gas chamber to work. Can you share with us that experience?
The first thing I had to do was I had to confirm, or how would you say it? I had to get approval from environmentalists, because the old gas chamber would just leach out to the bay. You know, when you emptied the vats of the hydrocyanic gas, it just leaked into the bay. So that was environmentally not forbidden at that time. I mean, it was not allowed at that time. So I had to have a leaching system put in with, of all things, Italian marble. I don't know why it came from Italy, but there was Italian marble that was put inside the what do you call it? I guess you'd call it the septic tank release, you know. And I had to comply with all that environmental new challenges. And then I had an individual from Indiana. I remember, I don't remember his name. I remember his last name was White, and he was a chemical engineer. So we brought him in and we tested the gas chamber. He had a device that tested the parts per parts per million of hydrocyanic gas. And the literature tells you that 900 parts per million is of hydrocyanic gas is lethal, and you know, you can't survive it. So we tested that gas chamber, and it went to 1,100 parts per million of hydrocyanic gas, and he assured me that it was lethal. We didn't. I had heard stories that one time they tested it with a pig. That was many years ago, but I had a chemical engineer who actually had a device that measured the parts per million. So that's where I learned when it was lethal.
Warden, I heard from Bobby also that you and him and I believe another lieutenant or captain went to Texas, and you actually went through an execution there, and you were there, I believe, for a week or 2 weeks. Can you share that experience with us?
Bobby and I went on the National Institute of Corrections grant. We went to Huntsville, Texas, and we met the warden, and we stayed there through an execution of his last name was Lee. I don't remember all of his name, but anyway, we stayed there until he was executed by lethal injection. And that's where we learned the process of lethal injection. And we came back, and I helped then the Attorney General, Dan Lundgren, to put together the protocol and law for execution by lethal injection. And it turned out in California that the inmates had a choice, either lethal injection or the gas chamber. So Robert Alton Harris, he opted for the gas chamber. He said that that's what he was sentenced to die in the gas chamber, and that's what he was going to do. That's what happened.
There's a quote that's attributed to him at the end of just before his last words. Do you remember what that was?
Yes, it was. Yes, I do. It was, "Everybody dances with the Grim Reaper."
Wow.
That was his last words.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, Warden, when you had him there, did you have him take a gasp of air? Do you remember what were those moments like when he took his last gasp of air, or did you have to tell him to take him? Explain to us what happened during that procedure.
I was the one, you know, since it was the first execution in 25 years, I threw the lever. And I was able to stand right there looking at him directly. Now, hydrocyanic gas, there's no way you can hold your breath. I mean, you can't a person can only hold your breath so long, but hydrocyanic gas enters through the pores of your body.
Oh.
And it paralyzes your lungs, it paralyzes your heart, and then you die. There had to be a doctor that had to be present. He was hooked up to a heart monitor, and he had to pronounce death. So his death, his execution took 7 minutes.
And I read, Warden, somewhere where they said that after he died, within an hour, he was transported out of the institution. Do you remember that process? Can you share that process with us?
Yes, there was a coroner's office that took him to the coroners. Didn't have to be any autopsy, because there was a doctor present at his death. at his execution. So he was just taken away and took into a mortuary and was going to be released to his family. And if my recollection is correct, his family opted to have him cremated.
Warden, after that execution, that was the first in 25 years. You
Yes.
had your staff there. Did you provide any type of counseling for your staff? And if you did, how was it? Was your staff receptive for it? How did that turn out?
You know, all the execution team, I made them. I had a psychologist prepare a pre-trauma instead of PST. It was a pre-trauma training, and it was mandatory for the execution team to undergo that training to understand the manifestations of stress of an execution. And so I had them go through that kind of training to, assure that they were going to be emotionally and physically okay with the experience. And it was good. It was a good experience, and they all survived very well.
So, Warden, since you're the one that actually pulled the lever, did you go through that training yourself?
Yes, I did.
Very good.
Was it helpful, Warden?
Set up the training. Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, was it helpful, Warden? Can you share any of that training that you remember back then that they provided to your staff and yourself?
You know what? It was like you get trained about dealing with after a traumatic experience. Like the people that fought in Vietnam. They didn't have any pre-stress training. They had what they call a PST. I forgot what they call it.
Yeah, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Yes.
And so I didn't want them to go through that. So that's why I had them trained in understanding the stresses that they were going to undergo and how to deal with them, to cope with them and not become ill mentally or physically.
Warden, after that, you had 3 more executions. Can you share briefly those? You don't have to share specifically, but you had 3 more. Were the other 3, were they gas or were they lethal injection?
They were all gas.
All 3 of them. They chose gas, huh?
Yes, they did. One kid, what was his name? He had been on death row for 8 years. What was his name? He had killed some elderly people in Alameda County. Stole their a very valuable coin collection. And he pawned them, and he left a trail that a blind man could have followed. And anyway, he was arrested, convicted, and executed. And David Edwin Mason, he volunteered to be executed. He wanted to be executed. He fired his attorney and hired an attorney that would help him get into the gas chamber.
Wow.
That's what he did.
Wow, interesting.
I'm gonna say 8 years seems kind of fast.
It was a fast track
process.
Just got tired of being on death row.
Yeah,
So, Warden, you do 10 years there, from 84 to 94. A lot of challenges, a lot of changes. What major changes, if somebody could go back in time and said, you know what, Warden Vasquez, I got it right, Joey, Warden Vasquez made this change and it still stands today. What is the accomplishment that, if I would ask you, well, I'm asking you 20 years from now, 30 years later, that you could say, you know what, I accomplished that and it's still going today, and it was a great accomplishment during your 10 years as San Quentin Warden? Share with us.
Well, you know what? It was very challenging, obviously. The first 6 months of my wardenship, we used to have shotguns. Gunmen used shotguns with 7.5 buck shot. That's great for killing pheasants and quail, but not for dealing with inmate institution disturbances. So we implemented the Mini 14, the rifle that was used in Vietnam. That was instituted, and I trained all my staff. And I remember that they came to see me. They had representatives came to see me, concerned that they were going to be using the Mini 14 because they knew the volatile inmates that we had there and the yards that we had to guard. So I assured them that as long as it was a good shot, that I would support them to the hill. They'd have no problem. So they went away, and we trained them, and everything went okay. And as a result, as I mentioned, they shot and killed 5 inmates in the line of duty.
Warden, I read somewhere that you were quoted where you stated, I believe it was the first 6 months or first year, there was over 500 shots fired in those yards. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? That's very interesting. Bobby, you remember we heard about that?
In the first 6 months of my tenure, there was 500 shots fired.
Wow.
I think I did the arithmetic. It was like 68 a month, and they were shotgun blasts. We didn't have that many 14 then, but yeah, I remember that very much. So, 500 shots fired, 68 a month, the first 6 months.
Wow,
It was jumping.
legendary.
Talk about putting down the law.
It was a jumping place.
Hey, Warden, so now you leave San Quentin after 10 years there, and you'll probably have much more grayer hair. At least you have hair, not me. But Warden, where did you go from there?
I went back. You know what? They offered me a choice of an institution. The institution that Bobby Hernandez was a warden at in San Diego, it was being built, and they offered me that. But you know what? I went back to Soledad. I had been to Soledad. I knew Soledad, and I knew the staff. So I selected to go back to Soledad. So I went back as the warden. I was only there 6 months, and the Santa Clara Department of Corrections, the Board of Supervisors had offered me the job as a director of the Santa Clara County jail system twice. And on the third time, I took it. And so I had left Soledad after only 6 months, became the director of the Santa Clara County Correctional Department of Corrections. That was of the 58 counties in the state of California. That was one of the first ones that was not operated by the county sheriff. The Board of Supervisors took it away from the Sheriff Winters, I think his name was, because they couldn't control his expenditures. So they brought me in, and I ran the jail system for 4 years.
Interesting. Warden, we have a question from Dennis Martinez. Dennis Martinez. Warden, what is your opinion of this Norway project? Will it work?
That's the new project from that the governor is implementing.
Yes.
I heard about
in San Quentin. In San Quentin, that's the pivotal area where they're starting it.
I heard that the wardens are required not to play. Is it pickleball or something like that?
Pickleball. Yes, that's what we're hearing. Yes.
Yeah. That's a bunch of bull, man. I mean that. I never, I could hardly believe it when I heard about it. But I think it's not even called. I think it's called San Quentin Rehabilitation Center or something like that.
Yeah, they're changing the name now. Yes, that's correct.
You know what? In all my career, 30 years in the Department of Corrections, recidivism was always 70%. 70% of the inmates that went out on parole returned back to prison. We had tried everything before having to play pickleball with them, and it'll stay the same. It'll always be 70% returning back to prison. I don't care what you do for them. Play pickleball or basketball or handball with them. I don't care what you do, but it is my prediction is it'll stay at 70% recidivism.
Warden, man, this is priceless. Right now, I guess Chris Kilby, he said the words, institutional knowledge is priceless. Man, Warden, thank you very much. It was an outstanding interview. We want you to come back, though, Warden, but we want to talk about the legends. And I'll call you by phone, and we'll see if we could get you back on, because you worked with some legends. I mean,
my honor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we would love to have you back. With that said, Bobby, any last words for the warden? Any questions? Any last words, Bobby?
Yeah, Warden, when you didn't get the Oscar for your role in Blood In, Blood Out, I knew the fix was in. I don't even watch movies and protest because of that, because I knew it was just a bunch of bull. So I don't watch movies anymore. You deserved an Oscar for that.
Very much.
Hey, Doug, any last words for the warden?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing those stories with us.
You're quite welcome.
Chris Kilby is a good friend of mine, and he's been watching this, and he encouraged me to come on these shows. And I think it's important these stories are told because they go away if we don't tell them. And like Dave has said in the past, now you're on YouTube, and your story's never going to go away. It's always going to be out there. And I think those are important.
As long as I live, I'll never forget my 10 years at San Quentin and carrying out the executions. They don't haunt me. They don't sit at the foot of my bed, but I'll never forget them.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget my 10 years at San Quentin.
And nor should any of us. We should never forget those events in our lives and our friends' lives because we're bound to repeat any mistakes that we may have made if we don't remember what we did. Well, thank you very much, sir, for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Warden, once again, and I'll say it again, you're a legend, Warden. And you know what? This video, it's going to be here forever. Your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, one day they're going to say, I want to see my tata, my grandfather, and they're going to be able to see this interview. Yes, Warden, thank you. We look forward to having you back. We're going to talk about the legends that you work with, the legends that I've heard that were around your era, and we'll let you know the names in advance in case one of them became an enemy. But we will let you know. But we will let you know, Warden. Once again, mil gracias, Warden. Thank you for your service and blessings to you and your family.
Thank you. Same to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you, Warden. Thank you. Wow, guys, what did you guys think, huh?
Well, that's awesome. I mean, his career. When did his career start?
65.
I was 2 years old.
I was 5 years old. And Bobby was 3 years old.
5
years old.
Wow, 5 years old.
But I mean, his recollection of details is quite phenomenal to this day.
I'll tell you guys, outstanding interview. Guys, I can't wait to have him back, and he is coming back. He's part of our family now. But guys, next week we're not having a show. I'm going to be teaching at a conference in Campbell, California on PTSD, suicides for police officers. But Bobby, I haven't told you this one. You're the one that hooked us up. On the 8th, we're having Jay Flores on the show with us. Can you tell us about Jay Flores? I know when I talk to him, I've been talking to him every day this week. He mentions you a lot, Bobby. He says, man, I love Bobby. We spend hours talking. Can you tell our viewers who Jay Flores is?
He was running, him and his brother were running Sinaloa, the cartel of Sinaloa, Chicago. And we had a great talk. I mean, I think that's one of the great things about, life. We all fall, we all stumble, and we get up. He was deep in the criminal world. He saw a lot, and we talked about it. And he's like, I know one of the things that was very touching to me. He says, I was still embarrassed of some of the, of what he was involved in, but now it's time for redemption. He was in Mexico. He has a very interesting family background. So he was a U.S. citizen living in Chicago, but because his family connections was going down to Sinaloa, he was meeting with some of the heavies, some of the pesados down there, and eventually started working for the U.S. government and was instrumental in helping take down the structure at the time in Chicago, for which, a lot of people don't realize. What you see in some of these inner cities, people think it's just gang members. It's gang members fighting over turf for the right to move such a lucrative product. And that's where we have so much violence in the inner cities. So I'm really looking forward to having him on. It was, we had a great talk. It was, it's going to be a great show, and make sure everyone there sets your notifications. I'm really looking forward to this episode.
One of the things that he mentioned day before yesterday when I was on the phone with him, he was telling me, David, the federales were about to hit my compound there in Guadalajara, and it was Mencho. Before he's the Mencho today, the one that runs the Nueva Generación Jalisco. He goes, him and his men came and rescued me and my family. He goes, before the Federales came in. He goes, before Mencho is the man that he is today. He's a new Chapo. And, oh, man, he has some stories. But I think the best part of his interview, Doug, is going to be the redemption part. Yeah. How God has changed this man. And now what he wants to do, he wants to train law enforcement. He wants to go to the DEA, FBI Academy, ICE Academy, San Diego Police Academy, and he wants to talk to the recruits about what they should be aware of, signs and tells of the cartels. So, oh man, this is Bobby. Thank you for introducing me to him. We're excited to have him on the show. It's going to be one of a kind. It's going to be a great interview. Great interview.
Looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it.
Guys, with that said, Doug, once again, brother, any last words from you? We're honored to have you. You're a legend, Doug, and I know you half-heartedly believe that because you're on the outside looking in. But me being in the inside San Diego PD, we all looked up to you, brother. And to have you as our co-host, to have Bobby, another legend, as our co-host, man, talking about credibility. Thank you, Doug. Any last words, Doug, for being one of our guests?
I really appreciate.
I guess. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm gonna throw it out if Chris is still listening, but he's the one that really encouraged me to contact you to tell my initial stories, and quite frankly, it's quite therapeutic. And we all go through things in our careers and personal lives. You don't even have to be a cop. I mean, but maybe you had an experience with law enforcement at some point in your life. But, telling your stories, I think is important. And I'm really enjoying this. And I really like hearing about other people because I'm not the only one who went through these things. And it's nice to hear, other people went through the same things I did. The stories are fascinating. And like I said earlier, if we don't share them here, they disappear. They're just because quite frankly, and you guys know it, when you retire, the departments wash their hands of you, basically. They don't need you anymore. So like when the comment earlier when Chris said that, this institutional knowledge is priceless, it really, really is. We keep reinventing the wheel when there's no reason to do so. No reason at all. Just even if they watch these programs, administrators, they would realize it's like, why are we starting all over from the beginning when we got all this knowledge out there that we could tap into to fix these things? And I really appreciate this. It's wonderful for me. Thank you,
brother. Thank you, brother. Bobby, last words before we say goodbye, and I'll see you on the 8th. Any last words, Bobby?
A follow-up on what you're saying is that right before I was going to retire, I remember I talked to a lieutenant who I had a lot of respect for. And I remember she says, Bobby, how are we going to replace the volume of work you produce? It's irreplaceable. I said, no, there's always somebody new, some young, hungry cop, corrections officer, whatever it is that's going to come in and fill in. We will soon be forgotten. And there's, just like when I was a young narcotics cop, one of the guests I want to bring on is my old, as close as I had to a training officer in Arce. He had no idea who I was. I wanted to be him. And there was a lot of the legends at Phoenix PD. I wanted to be just like those guys. And later on, I was able to work alongside and work with them. I was gathering intel because, the life of an undercover cop is kind of short unless your name is Saul Ayala. I did it for 7 years. And next thing you know, I'm doing wiretaps, I'm doing intel, I'm doing other investigations. But there's always going to be someone coming along that's going to take that torch and run with it. And I'm just proud of the time that I was able to be in the game. And I think it's just important. It's so important to document some of these experiences, like for the warden. This video is forever. His grandkids, yes. My grandkids right now. I have grandkids that are not even born yet. I have one that will be here soon. But one day when I'm long gone, they'll be able to see these videos.
Yes.
So that's what I think this is so important.
Brothers, we will see you. Pray for us, and God may use us, and we may touch somebody at this conference, and that God may deliver them and help them with their PTSD. With that said, Jay Flores, May 8th. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
A mi modo he vivido la vida, para vivirla no hay método escrito. A mi modo he cometido errores, pero de ellos aprendí poquito. He aprendido a llorar en la vida y también a gozarla bonito. A mi modo he llevado la vida, así pienso seguirla llevando. A mi modo